Welcome to the Disruptance podcast. The Disruptance podcast is the show that disrupts the way entrepreneurs think to make them more profitable and impactful. Rethink tired and outdated business norms to welcome innovation and unlock your unlimited possibilities. Here are your hosts, Forney and Greg Fowler.
All right, everybody, super excited about this one. We are diving deep into season 2, episode 1 of Disruptance. And I'm here with my good friend, Forney. And Eric, I really want to break this down for the audience who obviously has not been involved with the show up until this point. Disruptance has gone through so many incredible talking points and episodes, 81 strong so far, but we are into season 2, episode 1, so it's revamped. But I want to get your perspective, Eric. So where are we at? Super excited for this one.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know that we ever actually talked about the origin of kind of how we got here. And so the interesting thing is it really just started as a way to connect with real estate agents in the local market. I bought a Keller Williams franchise a fefew years ago, and I didn't know everyone there. And so my thought was, well, hey, I'll create marketing outlet for agents, and we'll treat it as a get to know your business method. And so there was no real vision. There was no 90 plus episodes or whatever it's been. It was just, I'm going to go sit down and talk to real estate agents and then let it evolve, right? It's like you get to the end of the street and then you decide whether you go right or left. And sometimes, I can create a plan and it can be the best plan in the world, but that amazing plan is preventative of taking the first step. And so in this case, we went head first into take action, figure out plan later. And so, it started and evolved as to multiple iterations. Michael and I, picked up the majority of the conversations in season 1. And, there's an interesting story about the idea of the name Disruptance.
Yeah, please.
Funny enough, people think that Disruptance is actually a word. And it is not. It is a complete made-up word, a compound of multiple words. And I would love to say that I was really creative in coming up with the concept, but I was on vacation, and I don't vacation well. And so I was Googling business names and business domains, and I found that there was a domain on one of those third-party domain sites for Disruptance, and it was probably one of the only domains I was like, that's not bad. I could buy that. I don't know what I would do with it, but I could do that. And so it was from some sort of third-party domain generator that the concept of Disruptance came into play. And I thought it was fitting. I thought it was fitting for the way that I think about business and the way that I try to approach things. And the fact that it's an indiscriminate word that really has no meaning, but seems like it's part of the everyday lexicon, felt like a perfect fit. It blends in and stands out all simultaneously.
I love that. I got to check to see if it's on Urban Dictionary. I mean, everything's on there. So it
should be. If it's on Urban Dictionary, it's a real word.
There you go. It's official if it ends up being. Right. Forget about Webster,
That's right.
But so Eric, again, for anybody else who isn't familiar with the show and kind of the format, who's this for? I mean, you already mentioned real estate professionals and top tier, but who's it for? What topics, are we going to be diving into in subsequent, episodes into the future? What can they have a soundbite of or look forward to?
Yeah. So, for me, a big passion is working with entrepreneurs. And, I think of that as that's small and mid-sized businesses. And you can put your own definition and wrappers around whatever you think small and mid-sized business means to you. It's, I think of it as a way to kind of chronicle my journey and a way to chronicle your journey, the things that we've learned through either successes or failures along the way. It's a way to, what I've found is that it's been really a great way to actually understand and reflect on some of the roadblocks, some of the challenges, some of even the successes, and then create processes or create systems, create a blueprint of how to be successful. I use one of the examples on all the time, and it is on one of the episodes we did about how to build momentum. And, it sounds silly, but I coach entrepreneurs every day and talk to business owners across the country. And, one of the things I find is that, businesses are nothing more than a collection of people, ideally working together on a defined system and process to achieve a repeatable, desirable outcome. And when you think about it, the most important component of that is a group of people. And when you get a group of people together, you get this like ebb and flow of energy, and sometimes it's good and sometimes not so much. And so when you get stalled out, how do you restart? That's one of the most difficult things in trying to in working with people is when you're stuck, how do you get unstuck? And so actually just having a documented process for, okay, hey, you know what, my business is stuck. What do I do? Okay, we'll just go back to the momentum blueprint. It's these 5 items I need to go inspect, these 4 ways to restart momentum. Awesome. Let's not make it complicated. And so the podcast for me has been a way to actually just start to really get clarity around, what do I do? What do I actually do that works? And oftentimes we're just so busy doing, we're never spending time thinking about what we do that's really successful. You wake up and you were born with just like all the good looks in the world and all this talent, Greg, I know. And so the way that you approach the world, you have a way of achieving success. And some of it you've documented and some of it you haven't. And somebody would come to you and say, how do I get to be so good looking and so talented and successful like you, Greg? And you would give them whatever comes to your mind. And yet the reality is you might leave out all of the actual important micro details that you've forsaken along the way as you've evolved and become more and more successful. And so I think this is a way to chronicle the micro activities that create major outcomes that oftentimes you don't hear on the TikTok 60 seconds world that we live in.
I really appreciate you diving into that, Eric, and for the compliments or backhanded compliments into that standpoint. It's burgers and pizza, everybody, if you're wondering what the magic secret is. That's what it is. But Eric, I mean, the breakdown of what it is looking at it from agents and entrepreneurs to become more profitable, productive, and impact essentially by disrupting the way that they think and do business. And I love that you take it from a granular sort of standpoint, a click by click or a step by step, play by play on really how to expand what they're currently doing, and from any facet of life. But from your perspective and knowledge, you've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and I think it's wonderful for people to understand. But I mean, there's so much to it. And to my understanding of Disruptance, it is about business and entrepreneurialism and growth and to that balance in life. But we're going to be talking about all kinds of things. And I think that it's important for everybody to know that every single time you come here to listen, you're going to be learning, you're going to be entertained, you're going to be educated into that standpoint. And hopefully you're going to join the journey along the way. I'm really excited. So Eric, but for anybody who doesn't know you or hasn't already been a fan, first and foremost, I'd encourage everybody to take a look back or listen at season 1. Obviously, we'd love for you to jump into season 2 here with Eric and myself. But Eric, let's talk about your background. Let's talk about, obviously full circle, what's brought you here, and why people really want to be listening to you, from you, and kind of applying the principles that you're going to be laying out in season 2.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right now I wear an interesting hat. Other than the actual hat that I'm wearing, the proverbial business hat that I wear is are multiple, and the kind of the breadth of scope of work that I'm involved in, I think creates a really unique perspective for people across multiple industries. I think of it as my job today as a VP of industry for Livian, we're the fastest growing real estate startup in real estate sales last year. Did a couple $1 billion worth of sales in our first full year. And my job is to run a research and development company. And that doesn't sound very sexy on the surface, but I find it to be incredibly entertaining, because what it means is I get to study entrepreneurs every day. I get to talk to business owners who are having a lot of success and some who are not. And I get to identify the patterns of what works and what doesn't work. I get to identify the way people think, the way people feel, and then I get to go apply them in my own business here locally, and then apply them with our business partners nationally when dialoguing with people throughout coaching, consulting, in that VP of industry role. And so, it creates this really what I think is a unique perspective of my job is. I mean this with the most humility, but my job is to be the most educated person in the room when it comes to running a real estate business. And if I'm not that, I haven't done my job. And so, I look at it as this is a way to bring that knowledge, distill it back to listeners, so that they can shortcut some of the challenges that I see other business owners face, or that I've faced myself in growing a business. We've run the #1 real estate team in Indiana for the past 7 years for Keller Williams, and been the past real estate agent, been the #1 agent myself when I was still actively selling real estate. And so I've been there and done that. I've been broke. I've not been broke. And so, bring an interesting perspective. I've made a lot of money in business and lost a lot of money in business, and have no problem talking about either one of them.
I appreciate you sharing that too, Eric, because the people that really understand, know, love, and respect you, you've been through so much, and you have so much perspective, and you've guided insane amount of professionals to really that height. And I think that it's going to be nice to have those candid and granular, detailed conversations to really help others do the same thing. From my particular perspective, from a digital marketing standpoint, been very fortunate and blessed to speak on some of the largest stages in the world and help thousands of real estate professionals over a decade when it comes to growing and scaling from a digital aspect, right? When we're talking about that, and being the founder of Lion Bolt Media, it's afforded so much in-depth knowledge and granular detail on how these action items actually take place. So from my perspective, I'm going to play as the voice of the audience, in addition to, you and I having our dialogue conversations, but I'm always going to come at it from an applicable standpoint to how to grow and scale from a marketing or distribution, place of heart. To me, as I'm a big fan of the conversation, and with Real Estate Titans, we've been running that for over 5 years, 273 live episodes and growing. Every week. I've been
not just like live episodes, you hit some home runs, right? what do you like? You've probably got Joe Biden on next.
That's right. Next week. That's right. But
let's talk about one of the more premier guest lists in the industry, though, truthfully.
I appreciate that, Eric, and you have been one of those premier professional real estate fans. I've got to throw that shameless plug out to you. But I think ultimately we've had so many incredible, CEOs of top companies around the world to #1 in their market, in their state, in their regions, to, all the HGTV, Bravo TV, celebritas sort of nature that everybody would recognize and know and trust. But everybody in between, to me, it was always about the human condition, their story, and what they learned and how they've grown and scaled. And I think with Disruptance, it's a very similar in nature. There's a lot of granular details that's going to be laid before in Disruptance to grow and scale to the highest of levels, but also in addition to just talking about life. And, understanding that we all have ebbs and flows and hardships and struggles, but how we can kind of attack, overcome, and then learn and share from those, I think is massively important. So for me in particular, being able to bring that to the conversation with you, Eric, is super exciting for me. And, I hope the audience gets a lot out of it. I'm really excited.
So, as somebody who's run one of the more listened to podcasts in the industry, and who dialogues with entrepreneurs all day for a living, what caused you to actually start a podcast and have that conversation?
Yeah, great question. When it comes down to it, so many people are curious as to what it is, and it ends up being a labor of love. And it sounds kind of corny and cliche, but to the industry that I've been serving and has served me for well over a decade into this aspect, it's a way for me to give back. I've learned and capitalized so much on all these relationships over all the years on an international basis, and applied to my personal business and life. For me to capture that content and share it live, to me, that's really everything. It started with speaking on stage, and I won't forget, I got off the stage and I had a client and a buddy of mine who was waiting in line just to kind of dialogue. And he had a deep question. He said, "Hey, have you done a podcast? Have you heard about podcasting?" This was prior to the show, right? So this was probably 6.5 years ago at this point. And at the time I said, "No, I know nothing about podcasting."
Yeah.
I just didn't have one. What was going on?
Yeah.
So it ended up being a practice what you preach sort of mentality. I'm a big
Okay.
proponent of media and capturing and then really saturating a market and solidifying yourself as that expert. So doing the deep dive and, setting up Real Estate Titans as a case study, really interviewing people that I love and respect that I've worked with for years, that are doing things at an extremely high level in real estate. And it just turned into what it is today. No intentions of it becoming what it is, but simply so that I could learn it and teach it to the clients that we serve, speak to that nature. And so that's really how Titans started. It keeps going and it's been consistent for over 5 years because I just love it, Eric. I mean, this type of conversation and dialogue directive to me is massive. And if you think about it, 20 years ago, none of this existed.
Yeah.
For you to have a conversation with an Eric Forney type, right?
Yeah.
I would never say there's another Eric Forney. There's only one. But if there was an Eric Forney type at the highest of levels, you would spend tens of thousands of dollars to have a conversation with him. And it would be a mastermind scenario, and it would only be for the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
Now, this information is freely given. You want to listen to it. You want to engage with it. It is yours. Now, on the double-edged sword or coin, there's so much information out there. Who do you tune into? Who do you listen to? I will state that always looking at it from a standpoint of being a practitioner into the nature and really being open and honest with that conversation, this is the place where you need to be. Disruptance is really the culmination of bringing the information to everybody and helping them grow, helping them change, and again, to rethink. That's the whole point of Disruptance, to rethink the way that they do what they're doing and how they're thinking. So to me, I think that's important, to kind of say and state, but
well, I mean, it's interesting. I've spent a lot of time with Gary Keller, and, anybody in the real estate industry knows obviously who Gary is. And Gary has a different definition than what I think the cliche definition of leadership is. And frankly, I like Gary's perspective on leadership a lot better. And that is that leadership is teaching people how to think. And John Maxwell says leadership is influence, and that's great. It's cute to put on a bumper sticker, and he tells it well, and you get emotionally excited about it and all. But at the end of the day, Gary's framework around it is if you don't teach your children how to think, then they won't get in the car and put their seatbelt on, or they'll get in the car with the wrong people. Or they'll get in the car with the wrong people and then not put a seatbelt on. But at the end of the day, when you teach someone how to think, they independently make the right choices. And that means that as a business, as a parent, as a spouse, in all roles that we have in life, our job is to choose between leading and following. Even every leader has to also be a great follower. And that still boils down to, we have to teach people how to think. You can, we both have kids roughly the same age. And, one of the things that we'll talk about that you alluded to is actual life itself. And, I actually think, as much as I love business advice from Gary, I think I might find his parenting advice more valuable lately than his business advice. And that's not because his business advice is not incredibly valuable. It's that at the end of the day, the parenting and the life advice is far more applicable and valuable when it's effective than business advice, right? As business is just something that we do, is just a title or just a label that we have. But everywhere we go, there we are. And so having some actual life advice, I think, is incredibly applicable. And one of the things that, Gary's talked about lately is, as a parent, you have two choices. You can either teach someone how to think, or you can parent. And there's a difference between the two, and you're either parenting or you're teaching someone, or you're leading. You're teaching someone how to think. And so understanding the difference between the two and how disruptance comes into play, of the job is to teach you how to think differently so that you can get what you want when you want it, because everything is available today in the world. There's no lack of resources. It's purely a lack of resourcefulness if we don't have whatever it is we want.
Eric, I love that example and explanation when you're talking about it that way too. And it's definitely going to be a wild ride. Let's talk to the audience, kind of what their expectations are, the pacing and the cadence. When are they going to be expecting a new episode of Disruptance?
Yeah.
So, where are they going to tune into, that sort of thing? Let's go that way.
Yeah, so absolutely. So every week we'll have this conversation, in the middle of the week, get it distributed on all major platforms. Of course, you can see Greg's handsome face on YouTube, myself included, and then of course Spotify, the Apple Podcasts, or anywhere that you listen, all major distributions from a podcast standpoint.
This is going to be great, Eric. And I can't thank you enough again for setting up Disruptance, really making this happen in a big way and taking it to season 2. It's an honor and a pleasure to be able to, work together and just share the knowledge and really help change and disrupt people's lives in a positive way. So this is great, Eric. I look forward to shooting many an episode into the future.